Hello, good morning and welcome. It's Tuesday, December the 2nd. The Conservatives and Labour are now neck and neck in our latest YouGov poll, both on 19, but both still trailing Reform on 26. My name is Sam Coates of Sky News.
And I'm Anne McElvoy from Politico. The Prime Minister switched back to foreign affairs last night at the Lady Mayor's banquet at the Guildhall, presenting himself as the serious Prime Minister, in contrast to his Tory predecessors. And he justified his pivot to become a foreign policy PM, saying a decision to rebuild Britain's relationships abroad is the biggest shift in British foreign policy since Brexit.
That's right. We'll have more on that fascinating Guildhall speech and its implications in a moment. But worth touching on something that happened late yesterday. The moment the markets closed, so too was the close on Richard Hughes's career at the OBR. He took the fall for that extraordinary leak and quit as head of the OBR, as we pretty much suggested was likely in yesterday's podcast. I think the government are hoping that that'll turn the page on the debate about the budget. It rumbles on in the Commons this afternoon with the health section and Wes Streeting, but the public debate, I think they want to move on. But how did it go down with the public? We've got a deep dive on that a little bit later with help from our friends at YouGov. Where has the budget left Labour? I've got a little teaser for you, Anne. Labour is now less trusted to run the economy than the Tories were after the Liz Truss mini-budget.
Spoiler alert, Sam, that is not necessarily a good thing. But the main topic on the government's agenda today is curbs to jury trials being announced by David Lammy. The Justice Secretary has rowed back on maximalist plans to scrap jury trials in all but cases of murder and rape and manslaughter. Still, with a backlog in the court system of around 80,000 cases, he does look set to justify getting rid of jury trial for theft, for handling stolen goods, for burglary and assault. So still quite a sweeping proposed change.
Yeah, David Lammy told The Times that his reforms are all about saving the jury system. But he added in an interview that we'll try to avoid criticism of the Speaker by revealing what's going to happen. He said, of course it's right that I reflect on whether somebody who has stolen 2 iPhones from Curry's should be heard by a jury. But he will present the changes in full, confirming the fine details to the Commons later today.
Fun fact, Sam, Robert Jenrick, the wig wielder in that famous or infamous, depending on your view of judges, speech not long ago, gets to do the opposing turn in the House. So that should be box office. I think Jenrick's had a bit of his limelight stolen by Kemi Badenoch recently, so this could be fireworks.
Right, I agree with that. It's interesting how much she is sort of grown in political stature and substance in the last few weeks. But let's flip back to that Guildhall speech on foreign affairs by the Prime Minister. It's his annual outing, because it's a great jumping off point for lots of the themes that we regularly talk about on this podcast and actually for a lot of the stuff that's going on today. But I like, as you know, style over substance. And before we get into the substance, I have a serious inquiry, but bordering on a complaint from one of our regular listeners. Now, he is Sky's very own Alistair Bruce, who was so taken when he saw the images of the Prime Minister last night at the Guildhall, he wrote to us with the following question. Can you ask number 10? I'm putting a little bit of GCSE drama, by the way, into injecting a little bit of anger that may not be there. Can you ask number 10 why Sir Keir Starmer never wears the insignia of the Knight Commander of the Most Honourable Order of Bath, which he was given by Elizabeth II? The gold oval neck badge, which should come around the neck, to sit just below the white bow tie. Also, where's the breast star he should have on his jacket below the breast pocket? So there you have it, Anne. This is a serious charge against the Prime Minister. He failed to dress properly. We will seek, as swordsman for the truth, we will seek what happened and why he has failed in his sartorial duty through the day.
Alistair is such an expert in these arcane areas, so I never miss him commenting on royal affairs with you at Sky. And we will, Alistair, definitely look into this, because not since Gordon Brown declined to wear a white bow tie, I think, has there been such a scandal at the same event in 2007. We keep our eyes on the important prizes here on this podcast.
Right, let's get into the actual substance. And one of the most striking things about the Prime Minister's speech at the Guildhall was that he used it to really get into, in greater, more punchy depth than I've seen him do before, the subject of Brexit. I feel like at the start of the autumn, he started to talk about Brexit in a way that he hadn't done before. And this marks possibly the high point in that change of strategy.
Well, he certainly went in two-footed over Brexit in this speech, Sam. He said it marked a degradation of political debate. He suggested the British people were duped, unable to see what was really on offer in that 2016 referendum. How it was sold and delivered was wrong, he said. Now, to me, that turns up the anti-Brexit rhetoric a notch from Keir Starmer, because previously the line has tended to be all the problems were in the aftermath, it wasn't correctly delivered. But here he says explicitly wild promises were made to the British people and not fulfilled. The idea that leaving the EU is the answer to our cares and concerns has clearly been proved wrong. I mean, it does leave an interesting question there, given that Keir Starmer first supported a second referendum on effectively a re-entry to the EU and then dropped that. If he feels so strongly, why doesn't he go and support another one? But he doesn't seem to be going that far, but he's certainly lambasting Brexit and the Brexiteers.
Yeah, this leaves two challenges in my view. The first of all is, how do Brexit supporting Labour voters feel? Or have we just moved on from Brexit? But secondly, it raises the challenge of what you're going to do about it. There was a fascinating detail in Rachel Sylvester's Sunday column in The Observer, which sort of picked over the process in the lead up to the budget, that revealed that Keir Starmer's new economic advisor, Minouche Shafik, actually put on the table the idea of rejoining the customs union, the EU customs union, at the start of the budget process. Now, it was quickly shot down. And of course, it would cause all sorts of difficulties with the deals that the UK has been negotiating around the world. But the fact that that debate is being held in Downing Street, I think, is pretty fascinating. Yesterday, we were telling you that sort of UK-EU reset wasn't going quite as smoothly as the government would like. Government sources quickly got in touch yesterday to say that they were making great progress on the SPS deal and negotiations around carbon markets and this thing that they call youth experience, which I think is the youth mobility scheme that has been the subject of much backwards and forwards and a difficult birth. I note The Guardian this morning is reporting that the UK is hoping to secure an agreement to rejoin the Erasmus student scheme by January, which actually could be one of those things that does unlock other bits of the debate.
Lots of shuttle diplomacy as well by Nick Thomas Simmons, basically the Europe man for Keir Starmer in the government to Brussels right now. And I think that does point in the direction you suggest, particularly the rebranding of youth mobility as the youth experience, and the youth getting to know each other in each other's countries is a big theme of the German state visit upcoming this week. And another area that Keir Starmer was talking up in that speech was the benefits of a close relationship with the US. He was talking up the new medicines deal, boasting that the UK has become the only country in the world to send branded medicines to the US tariff-free, albeit for a time-limited period. But that was a tough negotiation. As we know, it went on for quite a while. Of course, it's only part of the outcome. There is also an agreement which is effectively forced on us because of Donald Trump's personal irritation as he saw that the UK wasn't paying enough for medicines, in part because of the bulk buying power by the NHS. So that's you win some, you lose some.
So it's worth just pausing over the politics for that. The US, as we like to often say, is our closest ally with whom we have a special relationship. But the bill for medicines in our NHS is going to go up by 25%. Initially, £700 million a year, rising to £3 billion a year, because of the fact that the US president has decided to come for the amount of money that we pay for drugs. NHS bulk buy drugs. Donald Trump thinks that it was doing too good a job driving the price down. And the bottom line now, Anne, is a huge structural change in the way the NHS kind of budget works. The drugs bill is going to go up from 9.5% to about 12%. There is no new money from the Treasury to deal with this, even though it's been foisted upon the health department. And it's just one of a series of red flags for Wes Streeting. You'll hear all the aftermath of the announcement by the BMA that there are 5 days more of strikes in the run up to Christmas. They struggle to find money for the redundancies for NHS England. In the end, they've had, if you look at the budget documents, they've had to pull money from future years in order to fund that. And now it is going to be a big, big, big squeeze on the NHS budget, all because of a man that, Keir Starmer likes to boast about his strong relationship with. So I do think that sometimes you sort of have to blink. Often the greatest wins that we're getting with the US is the partial undoing of something bad that the US is doing to us at the moment. And so the debate can feel a bit topsy-turvy. But managing that relationship is absolutely key. I understand you've got a bit more intel about the race for the post of ambassador in Washington. What's going on, Anne?
Oh, I think you're definitely right that selling glass half full has become the new way of selling anything about the trade relationship with the US. It's just the "it could be worse" clause, and I think that definitely applies to that drugs deal with the NHS there. But there's also an interesting hint as to where the narrowing race to be our ambassador to the US could be headed. Now, I am told by people close to the process that the aim is not to have it stretch beyond the year and certainly to be done by early January. The frontrunner is Varun Chandra, the Prime Minister's business secretary, who played a major role in the trade talks and certainly knows what you've just been talking about there inside out. He has a lot of corporate support. He's a former heavyweight in business, running the Hackett consultancy in the US, and is said to be able to read the crosswinds of the Trump administration, which is obviously a skill set in and of itself. He's close to Jonathan Powell, who my diplomatic source describes mischievously as the real foreign secretary. Now, it's interesting how this plays out, Sam, because Chandra was a bit sidelined when Peter Mandelson was in post in Washington, the town, possibly not big enough for the both of them at the high levels there. They competed a bit for access to Donald Trump and to the administration. But obviously, with Peter Mandelson out of the way, that skill set comes back into its own. There's one other candidate I do want to mention, and that is my old acquaintance from the Russia House of Diplomacy, Nigel Casey. He was our ambassador to Moscow. He has had 2 postings in Moscow, brilliant Russian speaker, and has had a good run in the final interviews based on that and his South Africa experience. So he brings a bit of global South to the mix. There is also Christian Turner in the UN High Representative, so I suspect is somewhat the third wheel here. So it comes down to trade versus security, I think, to an extent, and what Starmer wants to foreground in his relations now. Is it still trade, or are we kind of almost done with that and on the turn of this taking us back to the relationship with the US being about high diplomacy, the national interest candidate, where maybe Chandra doesn't quite have the same chops as someone like Nigel Casey, or does the PM sort of stick with those who've been close to him, in which case I think he would go with Chandra.
The interesting thing is whether or not this ends up being a decision pretty much solely by Keir Starmer himself and his top team, and the extent to which this decision is also taken by Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Office, Ollie Robbins, the lead civil servant in the Foreign Office. And I think the instincts of those two groups pull in different directions. There is quite a tug from the Foreign Office to have one of their own. So, in other words, not Chandra in that absolutely critical post. So we will see how that plays out. I think there's an acceptance in the Foreign Office that the Prime Minister can choose his own candidate, whatever the formal interview process does. The question is, would that mark a sidelining of Yvette Cooper so early on in the job? You do have this extraordinary spectacle where, and I only discovered this quite recently, I didn't realise the extent to which David Lammy had opposed Peter Mandelson's appointment at the point that it happened. That was happening behind closed doors and only was sort of reported to me quite, a couple of months ago. You can have a foreign secretary that really disagrees with the Prime Minister over the appointment and it still goes ahead. Let's see whether Keir Starmer does that kind of politics.
Well, so much for the wider world. What about the long tail of the budget, Sam? You've usually got something you can pop out of your surprise bag for us on that.
All this morning on Sky News, we've done basically a deep dive using YouGov into where Labour has been left after the budget. It takes a few days for public opinion to settle. So there have been snap polls, but this is a sort of pretty thorough look at where people are. The debate that we've been having in politics really since Friday is whether or not Rachel Reeves exaggerated the sort of economic doom and gloom as a justification for putting up taxes when actually the problems of the economy weren't the real reason that she had a black hole, but also she wanted to increase headroom and pay for welfare. Now, we have discovered more than 1 in 3, 37% of people think that Rachel Reeves made things out to be worse than they really were. So a sort of question about trust and honesty. 18% thought she was broadly honest. So twice as many people thought she amped up the negative news. So that's not great. Overall, there has been a decline in the number of people saying that they trust Labour the most to run the economy. That's now just at 10%. Now that is worse, not only than Liz Truss took the Tories down to in the mini budget, as I mentioned earlier, but also at any point during Jeremy Corbyn. We really have a Labour economy problem. And this budget, if you look at the graph, if you switch on Sky News, look at the graph, the sort of red line for Labour just goes sharp down after the budget. It's not pretty. And just 13% think that Labour didn't break its election promises. So all of that is not great. 52% think the country would be worse off because of this budget. It goes on and on and on. If they were hoping to reset the Chancellor's relationship with this budget, a budget that Keir Starmer says that he is proud of, then the initial and now actually the slightly deeper examination of public opinion suggests that they haven't been able to do that.
No, they haven't. I suppose let me try to do. I'm a glass half full person today, really, in this casting. I'm just thinking that the one trend that could play to the government's favour here is if inflation does come down, and there are some more confident projections now that could happen. And if they could get into that zone, the 2% area, where they can actually say this makes a big difference to what people are experiencing, particularly on things like food price inflation, Sam, as well as taking the edge off energy bills, which was in the budget. I know this sounds like a Hail Mary pass, but sometimes that is how political economy works, isn't it? You get something big and structural that comes a bit to your aid. But as you point out, it's the handling and the competence issues. It's not, are you having a dreadful time and do you blame the government for that? It's, in a sense, do you think the government has made things worse on the economy? And I think that is the challenge for Rachel Reeves, for Keir Starmer in the next months, to look as if they have grip and are not just sitting there, their fingers crossed, waiting for the inflation chart to trend down if it does.
Well, Wes Streeting will be sort of at the helm of that budget debate in the Commons a little bit later. I think that Keir Starmer wants the next 3 weeks to be dominated by Christmas parties and a sort of general decrease in the tempo of the political debate. He wants to go back to politics treading more lightly on our lives and therefore political problems treading less heavily on his life. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit calmer in the next couple of weeks. What was very striking yesterday is that MPs do not want to have a big ruckus about the budget now, and for all of the negative polling about the budget, if they can get to Christmas without this blowing up again in their face beyond Richard Hughes having to resign, then they're going to take that option. Can you hear it? That's the alarm. That means we are out of time. So let's wrap it up. And we will see how the day unfolds. We will see you tomorrow.
If politics trod more lightly on our lives, Sam, would we still have this podcast? It's a question.
Hey, it's Sophie and Will from Sky News.
Too many headlines, too little time?
We get it, and that's why we're bringing you Cheat Sheet.
10 minutes every weekday morning.
All the big stories from politics to pop culture, minus the noise.
No doom scrolling, no spin, just the stories that matter from two people who live and breathe the news. Cheat Sheet with Ridge and Frost from Sky News.
Follow Cheat Sheet wherever you get your podcasts.